Hello, this is Benjamin Boyce, and welcome to the Voice of Reason podcast, or the Benjamin A. Boyce YouTube channel station. Today's guest in my interview circuit is Rahmaan Mwongozi, who is a systems admin kind of guy and a tech professional, and he's got a really cool Twitter account that he engages with people in a human way, and so I just wanted to have some human time with another human being. We do talk about the ways in which algorithms can or cannot strain the value and insert appropriateness into internet communication, and then we just talk about how to be human in this crazy world. So that's all you really need to know. It's just two guys having a hot topic and chill time together. Here's Rahmaan. And you've been doing a podcast. Were you doing anything before the podcast, production-wise, speaking or public speaking or anything like that?
Yeah, well, before the podcast, I have a ton of music production studio. That's the piano back there. Both my parents are musicians, so I grew up in a house with a lot of music. And not to bore you, like I obviously I just have sort of a natural talent for music, but then I see the system behind it, and then I just end up applying that, across a lot of different things. And so I'm because I work in tech now.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to talk about that, we could talk about that too. It's it's all kind of fascinating how certain things click and connect in my head.
You said you saw the system behind music. Are you talking about how it connects to the audience? Or are you talking about how to structure songs or
Everything.
theory? Or?
Everything. So obviously, you have the technical aspect of songcraft of how do you structure the notes to make a melody or a song. You have the actual tech, which you are playing it or recording it into or programming it into, and then obviously you touched on it. There is the audience or the listeners perspective, and so as a writer, you are definitely trying to get the audience to feel a certain thing or think a certain thing, and so really just like exploring a lot of those nuances and gray spaces of how things really interact with each other.
Mm-hmm. And
yeah,
your bio says that you're a systems guy, kind of thing?
Data and systems analyst.
Is there like an overlay between music and how data flows or how it's used, or are those completely different?
No, it is kind of the same in certain ways. I think the way, because you're trying to tell a story. I think that's probably the same from an audience standpoint. It's the same that way. It's like you're trying to tell a story. From the programmer standpoint, is you want it to be as simple as possible. Not a lot of moving pieces. Again, there's a very technical aspect of it, but there's an art to it as well. You're dealing with problems. So in a song, it's like, how do I connect this theme to the next theme and work on your transitions? When you're dealing with data, it's how does this table relate to that table, relate to this, to solve the question that's been presented to you. So yeah, it's I don't know. It makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Because I tend to look at everything through a very specific prism. So whether it's music, data, people, it's all relationships to me.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And we can pivot anywhere. So we're just going to have a conversation.
No, yeah, I'm good, man.
And go where it takes us. I was thinking there's a little bit of a controversy going on in like the internet world, and I don't know if it's interesting at all to you, but I think there's aspects of it that could be extracted to be interesting. But there's this fairly big YouTube guy named Steven Crowder he's pretty right and he's pretty rude and he's a comedian. He's got his own thing. I'm not for or against him. He's got a very strong voice. And then he mocked a man who's works for Vox Media, which is
Hmm.
really left leaning, and the
Hmm.
way that Stephen went after the guy was to break down his arguments, but also make fun of him a lot because of his homosexual identity and
Yeah,
eh,
I've seen it popping up and around, and a lot of that stuff I don't try to get too down into the weeds. It's only like the fifth or sixth day do I like to come in and sort of sift through
mhm.
the wreckage in the fire to see what there is of value. And I saw someone put a clip of some of the things that he was saying about the guy, and yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So my kind of what I'm thinking about and
Hmm.
wondering what you think about the role of comedy as a form of communication.
Yeah.
The way that it operates
Hmm.
often is to really punch hard and to say what you're not supposed to say. And that's actually how it works. And so
Yes.
to misread it, it's very easy to misread comedy, rude forms of comedy, as harassment. And not to say that he wasn't harassing if he
Yeah.
kept on doing it over and over and over again, but
Yeah.
it's interesting to see these tech companies then go through and try to apply a certain form of lens to then go around and deplatform everybody who even brings up any of these issues or any of these ways of talking. And I just wonder what your thoughts are about censorship or sifting the data of what is acceptable speech and what's not acceptable speech, and if you think systems theory could ever be able to parse that.
Um, no, because you're dealing with people, and people, there's an algorithm to dealing with people, but
Hmm.
when it comes to like how do you from the tech side is like how do you parse speech,
Yeah.
the intent of it, how it lands on the audience. It's almost impossible because you're really just dealing with taste. I mean, comedy it's about taste. There are some finer nuances to it. Obviously, so you have more of like the roast style of comedy, which you can say Crowder was maybe engaging in, versus satire, which is a little bit more. It can be crude, but also it's actually very sophisticated,
Mm-hmm.
with the intent and how you structure everything. And then you have jokes and everything like that. I think I think what I, I think what Crowder was doing, I think he may have been joking. However, in his delivery of it and the medium and the context and the time that we're in, yeah,
Mm.
I don't, I think it was a joke for a small group of people projected over, let's say, the, general society.
Hmm.
And most people or a lot of people didn't think it was funny at all. Like with roast, I'm not necessarily a fan of roasts personally. I get the comedic tradition, your mama jokes and playing the dozens. I get all that. Um,
Yeah.
Personally, I'm not. That's not my style of comedy. Um, I don't find the humor in it
Yeah.
personally.
So it seems like the problem that tech companies face, let's say YouTube and Twitter, is that they are simply hosting all these different forms of human communication.
Right.
And there are forces within those people that they serve that want to shut up other people and or misread other people. And th- it seems like there's a social solution to weighted speech or offensive speech that doesn't necessarily end up becoming authoritarian or isn't wielded by some sort of central authority. And I wonder, if you don't like something, how do you speak against it?
Yeah.
Do you need a father figure there? Do we need these filters?
No, it's weird because a lot of things, yeah, it's like, we're all adults here. You should. There are certain rules and protocols that we expect from adults, right?
Right.
Some emotional stability, right? a bit of a thicker skin than taking offense at every perceived slight. Um, and so that's how we expect people to act, but the online world is weird and it does some strange things to people. It provides a veneer of anonymity, and behind this veil, people feel more emboldened to take more risks, drop certain social norms, which, I mean, everyone is like, oh, more free speech, it's helpful. And it's like, well, not necessarily. Everything has diminishing returns,
Mm.
right? So just as we would like these media companies to provide some level of, some standards, right? There are diminishing returns depending on how tightly they set that filter versus how wide. And then also they're not really, there aren't people doing this 24/7, right? A lot of these things are handled by algorithm,
Yeah.
and algorithms tend to be very specific, and anything that deviates out of the prescribed parameters, well, then the algorithm is almost useless
Hmm.
at that point. The machines aren't quite smart enough, but then it's like, well, what happens when the machines are that smart?
Yeah.
Then what happens, right?
Do you foresee that happening? Like there'll be
um
enough algorithms, or there'll be a super algorithm that'll be able to interact with speech?
yes, absolutely.
Hmm.
um because it's just a matter of resource allocation, right? Anything is possible given enough resources, time, material. I mean, it's all possible. Um, like for instance, they say the human brain is the most complicated, thing that has been created in the universe so far as we know. Um, and it took how many millions of years, billions, if you want to look at the entire evolutionary cycle, to get this little thing here. Enough time and resources,
Yeah.
you can do almost anything. Um, and we know that your brain is just a collection of several billion neurons. We can make synthetic versions of neurons. It's just a matter of time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't necessarily, I'm sort of 50-50 on what happens when when computers become very smart. I mean, I grew up in the 80s. I saw the first Terminator when it was
Yeah.
like a brand new concept. I mean, obviously you had Space Odyssey, and sort of that, but the Terminator was like, whoa, wait a
Yeah.
minute, time out. um and then there's that. I don't necessarily think it's going to go that far. It's possible. It is very possible. Depends on the algorithm. But then also you have sort of I don't know if you saw the movie Her.
Yeah. Yeah. With the phone and
Yeah,
walking.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so not necessarily um, his interaction with the AI. I mean, like aside from that, but a lot of the technology that they already had beforehand, which required a lot of AI at a very much higher level than what we have, is really just managing things in the background,
Mm.
just like most of our any tech that we've actually created. It tends to sort of filter into the background.
What do you
And
mean
we
by that? Like doing basic tasks
Yeah,
for us, turning on
yeah,
lights? What do you
yeah.
mean?
Basic tasks for us, automating, like, so we don't necessarily need people to balance the load of the electric grid. It's sort of self balances in a certain way. The If you go to Wall Street, right, there are almost no traders on the floor anymore. It's all handled behind the scenes on the
Okay.
computer.
Yeah.
Things move around. Um, I'm not a fan of robots that move through space, though, right?
You're not a fan because you're scared of them irrationally, or you just don't think that that's necessary?
I mean, obviously there are applications, but I'm like, I don't know how wise it is to create something that is more adept at navigating our world than we are.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's simply not necessarily that the machines have gone crazy, but if they malfunction, like just a basic malfunction, they're not trying to kill us, but they just malfunction. There's actually a certain theory that we don't need malevolent AI to harm us. The AI can just pursue its programming to its ultimate logical conclusion. You saw the movie I, Robot.
Yeah, yeah. Well, actually the book of short stories by Isaac
Yes.
Asimov like really
Yeah.
get into it.
Yeah, they really get into it. But, the summarized version from the movie, right? You had the giant AI that wasn't necessarily violent or malicious. She, as it was, I guess, said in the movie, was just trying to follow her programming to its logical conclusion.
Yeah.
Now, for us humans, that was a bad thing because one thing that AI can't do, at least not yet, and I actually think will be very difficult. Well, no, it's impossible actually. AI can't tell us what is of value to us.
Okay.
They can do a lot of cool things and make a lot of relationships and just do a lot of things, but no one can ever tell us what is valuable to us. I can't tell you what's valuable to you, right? So if I can't even do that person to person, and we've been people, for several hundreds of thousands of years, an AI, something completely alien and foreign to the human experience, where would it have to draw on the context?
Mm-hmm. Well, this is the thing then. It's one thing for us to develop robots that navigate the physical space that we navigate, but we're already putting the robots to walk among us on a cultural level by sifting through our communication, by running through
Yes.
these mediums of communication. We have these bots that go through and then start to tell us what's of value to us, and so that goes back to if I can't tell you what's funny, I can either be funny and you laugh or don't.
Right.
To set up a robot that tells me what's offensive or not is even further.
Yeah, it's impossible because you're really getting to the context of what it is to be a human. Your unique experiences of being a human being from, whatever your background is, whatever's going on with you today. I have my own. It's a moving target because I can tell you a joke today that's hilarious. I can tell you the same joke tomorrow and you're not in the mood for it. I can tell you it 3 days from now and you might want to like knock my head off. It's really a moving target. I'm sure AI can sift through and say, I think this is what you might like. From your history, I can begin to ascertain that this might be of value to you. But ultimately, a person has to choose. Yes, this is of value. Food is less valuable to you if you're full.
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah. Amazon has this habit or some algorithm that Amazon uses has this habit of advertising things to me that I just bought. It's the weirdest thing. Like, I just bought shoes. I don't need shoes, dude.
Right, right. What about this pair? And this pair is like, I'm kind of good.
You brought up earlier when we were talking about Crowder, and again, this isn't just about him or our feelings about him. This is just about the pattern of behavior. Yeah. And you said that you watched the clip of all the things that he said about the Vox guy, and you made this overture that maybe Crowder, this wasn't the time for that kind of jokes. Maybe this climate wasn't necessarily... it's not really proper for those jokes to happen. And I just want to use that frame of reference to ask you, what do you think this time that we're in right now is telling us about us? And maybe I'm talking about the panic mode that we're in, or we're in a lot of fights.
People are tired. People are tired. There's a lot of fear and there's a lot of anxiety for a variety of reasons. Obviously, there are economic reasons, there are social demographic reasons, a lot of different things. And so when I say it's not the time for certain things, it's not to say that it's not to say you can't say that right now, but it's given the landscape, given the room. There's, speaking of comedy, there's just or performance, there's this notion of know your room, right? Know your room. A joke is, and so it's like given the high level of stress and anxiety that we have in society, certain things may be less funny than they would have been in normal times. And then with the whole Crowder thing, if he's telling a joke, I would say, okay, tell me, Mr. Comedian, what's funny about that?
Mm. Wait,
Like,
can a comedian do that though? Can we like eviscerate comedy and it still maintains its funniness?
oh, well,
Do you think
so
that's
no.
possible to
If
analyze comedy?
So if you unravel the joke, right?
Yeah.
The joke in itself, it loses sort of it loses the performance humor, right? But
Okay. Okay.
when you're unraveling a joke, you are breaking down, okay, well, what's the logical premise here? What are we examining? What is the point of interest here? I mean, a joke is very technical. You can ask any comedian, and they're doing a lot of work. I mean, my girlfriend is a comedian, and so I sit with her as
Huh.
she works out her jokes. Writing a joke is no different than writing a book or creating a movie or anything. It's a creative process,
Okay.
and there is the art of it, but then there's also the technical. How is it crafted?
Yeah.
And then the point and the purpose, right? And so with Crowder, I would say, okay, well, what is the point of what's funny about a person having a lisp?
Hmm.
You know, like why, if that's a joke, okay, explain to us then where the humor is in that.
Hmm.
Because, maybe we missed it. You get directors, on the press junket, and they explain, this is what I was trying to explore, right? This is what this character is, the art. I mean, if you when you talk
Oh,
to
okay.
Lucas of about Star Wars, and he tells you, very plainly that the first Star Wars was a hero's journey,
Yeah.
right? This is the artistic premise that he was working with. So I would ask Crowder, okay, well, what is the artistic premises
Hmm.
for the joke of this guy has a lisp?
Yeah. I wonder if part of our experience of anxiety, I don't know about the fear, but maybe the anxiety is that when you think about 10 years ago, a comedian, or maybe 20 years ago, a comedian can read a room because they're actually in a room filled with people. But now
Hmm.
we're all sharing the same room, or you can just walk from one room to another. And so something that's funny in one context
Yeah.
becomes graphically harassment in another context. But because there's
Yeah.
this collapsing of context or this
Hmm.
expansion of context into this anywhere place,
Yeah.
would that not just naturally lead us to always being anxious and hungry and not knowing how to navigate this room and contextualize all this stuff that's just in this huge soup?
No, I
Hmm.
don't think it's that. I don't think it's that difficult at all. Um, I think I think what we have here. So one thing, comedians are actually comedians are very, very smart people. Like the good comedians, right? They have a very unique and brilliant way of seeing the world, and they see it a little bit differently, right? And when you begin to unravel their premises, you know what they observed, the wrinkle that they found, and the way they present it, it's high art, right? It's a very complex thing, and the best comedians are very, very astute, very, very brilliant people when it comes to the human condition. And
Okay.
what I think what we have now is a lot of class clowns who are going through their act, and they think it's funny, but it's actually just performance art, right?
Okay.
They aren't, it's not necessarily for our benefit. They just want to be seen. They want, hey, look at me, look at what I'm doing. And that might be funny, the antics of it, but, you
Okay.
know,
I think that This is a good analogy that you're saying. Like, there's a class clown, and the class clown actually serves a purpose and can go pretty far in life because he's appealing to a kind of a lower form of humor, right? That is accessible to more people because it's lower. The lower you go, the more people can have access to it. Like a joke about boobs is going to hit everybody because we're all mammals, because that's just like, that's something that we all share. Now, when we talk about a higher, more refined form of art, like there's two aspects of the brilliant comedian is to make that really astute observation that can hit everybody in the room, but the people who can think through it, like, he's talking about a different point. There's something beyond that if you are educated or interested in it, you can go on that journey and find more. But the comedian still has to hit the funny bone of everybody in the room. And so the thing is that when we're living in this huge shared arena, the people who are going to amass the most people are the people who are going to appeal to that lower basic instinct. Now, I guess my point is that there's going to be like a refined, the refined people, the people who like refined things and the people who make refined things. It's always going to be a smaller subset of people than the people who appeal to the base. Unless, I guess, Apple is a company that walks that line between appealing to everybody and the sense of being exclusive.
Well, I think there's the class clown can, they can, there's a sort of a demarcation line, right? So if you're talking about a point of history and there's just something ironic that happens in history and, they speak up and bring light to it, okay, kind of funny. Or if everyone is kind of full of tension and they're like, hey, here's this thing, lighten it up. But if the class clown is picking on the kid that is having trouble reading or has a stutter, it's like, well, it's not, and it's not like a stutter can't be funny. There's a famous, there's a character in the movie Harlem Nights. I don't know if you're familiar with the movie. Harlem Nights. Eddie Murphy, Arsenio Hall, right? Okay, exactly. Yeah. So there's the boxing champ, the heavyweight champion of the world, comes into the club and talking, because Richard Pryor's. This is like a great collection of just all-time comics. Richard Pryor, Red Fox, Della Reese, and so the heavyweight champion comes in and he's talking, but he's punch drunk, and so he's like, and in the context of it, because he comes in so sophisticated and really like upscale, he's wearing a tuxedo and he opens his mouth and he's just struggling with the most basic sentence, and so the tension of can he get it out? When is it going to come? That's funny. Yeah. But if you have a kid who is, trying to read, or has trouble, or is not necessarily comfortable reading out loud or public speaking, and to like poke at that anxiety and that fear, now you're, as they say, punching down, right? That's not really funny.
Well, this is the interesting layer to it, is that the Vox guy, I can't remember his name. I should probably look it up. But the Vox guy, he's actually in a position of power. He has the power to cause YouTube to go on a banning spree. So the interesting thing on the, I don't know the right term for it, but the highly progressive-ish or left-ish media is that they try to use that you can't punch down on me. Right. Because I have this, they use this identity to then hide a behavior that's actually pretty malicious, and then they hide behind that as a protective, and then they go after and use and abuse their power.
Yes. Now, if you are, I kind of hate to admit this, but I wasn't always like the nicest person, and I remember distinctly. I can't remember if I was in 8th grade or 9th grade. And there was this young kid, and he had a lot of birth defects, and he was disabled in a lot of ways, and he was like an angry, bitter kid, and he used that to say the most vile things to to other people, and just be just a real jerk. And one time, and I think I told him, and he said something very, very off color. I don't know if to me or no, I think he said something to me. And I just paused and I just told him, I'm like, listen, man, I'll punch you and you might die. Right? It's like you can't use your disability as a shield to just throw out all this vitriol and nonsense, because we may be able-bodied, if you will, but we still have feelings. I mean, there are things that are still sensitive,
Yeah.
to me. And so just because someone is not necessarily in what one might perceive to be a position of power. Let's say I'm able-bodied and this person isn't. That doesn't necessarily mean that in every context I'm always sort of the superior and this person is the inferior. I don't know if my mother died, last week, and this disabled kid is talking about my mother. Who's in the position of power here?
Yeah.
Obviously he didn't say anything else to me that day, and the point made. I can't say if I would have gone through with it. I probably not. I mean, because he was a real small kid. But
voicing that was sufficient.
Yeah.
To kind of drawing a line in the sand.
Right. It's like, hey, wait a minute, time out. Let's step back and examine what's actually going on here, because if we want to, this is something that I'm very big on. Is the use of power, and I'm big on the restraint of it, right? Because it once you start moving down certain paths, it's very, very hard to bring them back. And so I caution people in my personal life, online, if you will, is like, hey, let's just take a step back, 30,000-foot view, and examine what's going on here. What's the intent? Where do we hope to go from here? That's why I would ask Crowders, like, okay, I will accept your premise that this was a joke. What's funny?
Okay. Yeah. So in that, you were saying something about kind of seeing where things are headed in a certain direction.
Yeah. Well, actions have reactions, and you end up following along a path. And so it's, where is this going?
Yeah.
What are we doing? It's like, and if we keep racing to the bottom, eventually we will hit bottom.
Well, yeah. Okay. That's the question then. It seems like it might not be necessary to appeal to the base in order to build a base, but it just takes longer to contact people who are into a more refined sort of thinking. So as a creator or as an influencer or somebody who wants to provide content to other people, there's a quick way and then kind of a slower way.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example of some crude humor that I used just this afternoon on Twitter. So you have this the straight pride pride parade thing going on, right? And so my post was something along the lines of the hashtag straight pride parade is very, now 20 years ago.
Wait, it's very what? We can say it. Oh, wait. Well,
you get the joke.
Well, I'm putting in a word there that you're not supposed to say.
Exactly.
Because Kevin Hart, I think, just got in trouble for that.
Exactly. And so what I did was, instead of say the word, I put in parentheses, insert problematic phrase here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, actually, let me pull it up. I'll tell you exactly what I said. So, and it's lowbrow humor, right? It's very lowbrow. Okay, yeah, this straight pride parade thing is so, insert problematic phrase here. Now, if you're of a certain age, you know what we would normally put there.
Yeah.
But I put insert problematic phrase here as a sort of a deeper play on the fact that of like the word problematic, the fact that we can't really say the word gay in that context anymore. Is playing on different levels, but it's still kind of potty humor. Right?
Yeah. It's punchy potty humor. Yeah.
It's
Well, I
punchy,
mean,
it's real basic, and I'm not saying I'm a comedic genius, but
yeah.
you
Well,
know,
with the whole straight pride parade thing, the the concept of pride, it went from
yes.
like one day to a weekend, and now it's a whole month. So, I mean, if we're going to be proud in our sexuality, not even gay men can keep it going for an entire month. So the straight guys got to show up, you know?
We'll try though.
Okay. They would try.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
why not?
Actually, it's funny. It's funny. I actually I had the podcast. You mentioned the podcast, which I don't do anymore. I did it for a year. I did it for 50 weeks. Took
Oh,
it to
okay.
vacation.
Just on your own. This is just you speaking. Okay.
Every week, every week, every week. Sometimes I would do 2 a week. And I put it down because I want to transition to some other things. I sort of use it as a platform to practice some things. But one of the episodes was about gay men, and it was sort of a tongue in cheek, and people can make a joke out of that. Of, are gay men the epitome of manliness? Right?
Oh, interesting.
And the premise was, the gay community, the gay male community is a community devoid of female input, by definition, by default. And so when you examine a lot of the behaviors and protocols within the gay community, and you think about it, when I think about it, I'm like, no, I see the maleness in there. I mean, if you just left us to our devices of what we like, it's like, oh, anonymous sex, check. Risky behaviors, and everything, check. Now it does play on. I don't even say it plays on certain stereotypes. I mean, these are sort of very real, male kind of urges and things. I mean, we tend to be sort of naturally aggressive. It's, probably all the testosterone and everything like that. Yeah. And so it was a very satirical, but also true of, this is the male drive, void of female, moderation. I know I moderate a lot of my behavior because I like the company of women. And the point of that was kind of to sort of to show that that gay men aren't really strange men. They're just guys. I mean, they target it differently, but they're guys. And then also, because they aren't necessarily, and not just gay men, but just the gay, the lesbian, the bi, all the whatevers and the plus. I can't keep up with it now. It isn't all better, right?
What do you mean all better?
Just their place in society. Now, yes, they are making strides, and yes, they are moving closer to the center of society, of normal, average, everyday, acceptable society that heterosexual people walk in. But there are still challenges. I mean, it is allowable to be fired from certain jobs. It is still allowable to not have, to not be able to find housing. There are a lot of different things. It's not necessarily, all well and good.
Yeah.
And so I can see from the gay perspective, it is still a constant fight. Is part of it maybe a residual, some residual, anxiety or angst from a time not too far ago when it was almost open season on being gay? Maybe that is fair. Maybe there are some overreaches in some points. I mean, I know some gay people who are a bit uncomfortable with certain things that people assert in the name of homosexuality, bi, trans. Yeah, I mean, again, just like any other, I mean, it's kind of a cliche. Gay people aren't a monolith,
Yeah.
right? There are
No.
liberals, there are conservatives, there are socialists. There are just some bad actors who are using, this thing as a pretext to just go be assholes.
Were you ever attracted to activism or participate in kind of an activist mindset or action kind of thing?
No, because there's no money in it. Well, I say that
If
because
there
I say,
were,
no, I say that, but then I have to like
there's
kind
probably
of
some
check that
levels to that.
because now it seems like there's a whole lot of money in
There's a
activism.
whole lot of money in the activism.
Yeah, no,
Like in
no,
college or growing up.
no. I wanted to make money.
Hmm.
I wanted to. I know you're not necessarily familiar with all the details of my story and my book and everything like that, but I grew up with not a lot of money. I mean, things got better over the years. I mean, credit to my mother. She's, the most awesome person. Well, I don't know. It's a tie between my mother and my daughter.
Oh
Of the
yeah,
most awesome people that I've ever met in my
yeah.
life. But
Hmm.
for me, where I grew up, how I grew up, I had a different focus. Now, coming from my situation, a lot of people did go into activism. My father is different. My father is someone could call him, a Pan-Africanist, very very, pro-black, uplifting the black people and so on
Hmm.
and so forth. He grew up in a different era. He grew up in the Bay Area in the 50s and the 60s, when
Hmm.
the hippie movement was in ascendancy, and the Black Panthers were founded in Oakland while my father was a preteen, right?
Okay.
So this was the era he grew up in when, he was what, 12, 14, maybe like 14 years old, no, 12 years old when the Civil Rights Act was passed. So he was basically a teenager before he was considered a full citizen, right? So he
Wow.
has a
Yeah.
certain perspective and view on the world, and he channels it that way. Me growing up in the 80s, Ronald Reagan was president. It's funny, I saw a lot of the trends that we see now. I saw it happening back then, right? Systems, right? I've always been sort of keyed into systems and
Yeah.
algorithms and everything.
Like what
Um,
kind of things are you talking about that you saw back then?
well, the stripping of resources from the cities, this the cutting of funding. So I think it was 1978. I was two, so I actually had to go back and read this. But and they were still, I guess, talking about it as I was a kid. But they changed the law in California, as it pertains to property tax, right? Now, property taxes are the way that schools are funded. I think it's a terrible way to fund schools, but here we are.
Hmm.
And what they did with the property taxes, they sort of froze it. They sort of froze it in place. And no one really thought much about it, but over the course of history, there was this widening gap between sort of funding that was frozen and the rising cost of everything else.
Yeah.
Um, California was the very first place that happened. And from there, it's been transported through the rest of the country. You fast forward 35 years, you know,
Okay.
education has been frozen in
Yeah.
terms of, percentage of what we spend. College is more expensive than ever, and there are all these externalities of what that is. You know,
Hmm.
I lost my point.
So well, that's interesting. So your father grew up in a very particular era, and that
That's
kind of
what I
set him up. And then you grew up in a different
so,
era,
so
and
I grew up in the era, yeah, I found my point. So I grew up in the era where, like I said, I was poor, right? Um, Reagan came in on this, this wave of energy. It wasn't so great for cities at the time, but whatever. The economy started booming, a lot of deregulation. I am a fan of deregulation in certain ways. I mean, I have a finance degree. Like I've said, how much I love making money. Um, and so I saw all of this and I looked at the world and I decided, you know what, I'm going to get mine. Right. In the most American, in the most American fashion, it's like, oh, there's a race to get money and power and influence and whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to get mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so being an activist, nah, that wasn't it. You
Yeah.
know, I was like, my father's a musician and I love music. I would love to be, a musician of some type. You're working too hard for too little money. I mean, the
Yeah.
top half of 1%, makes it. I mean, what Jay-Z, was crowned a billionaire, an official billionaire like earlier this week. Man, that's great. Um, However, it's a
How
lot
many
easier,
billions of musicians though?
right? Have died on that dream. And so it's like, hey, you know what? Within this system, this is the easiest way to make some money and live a comfortable life. And that was my focus and goal. I figured I couldn't help anyone if I were poor,
Yeah. Well,
right? Go ahead.
that was what I was gonna say. So you went down a different path, but then this internet thing comes along, and you start to craft a public image. I mean, you have a Twitter account, and you're
Yes.
playing with media and stuff like that. So now you have experience to give to the world, and you have like the perspective to actually build, kind of consciously build your presence
Yes.
online.
Yes. Um,
And what is your purpose with that?
so my purpose with that is, um, I wrote a book. I wrote the book. I wrote my memoir, right? I started it. I was 41 when I started it, and it took about a year and went through the whole publishing and editing. And it was really sort of kind of like a halftime assessment of where I am in life. You know,
What sparked you to write that? Was there an
um, it was
incident
a
or?
no, it began as a letter to my daughter.
Huh.
Um, I realized a long time ago that we don't know our parents as people. We know them as our parents and their job, but we don't know them as individuals. We don't really know their histories. We don't know the different things that they're dealing with or their hopes and desires, which is the whole reason why we came into existence, right? That story is the reason why we're here. Um, and I was thinking about that, and right when my daughter was, getting into her teenage years, and so I wanted to pen a letter to her saying, "I understand what you're going through. I understand how it may feel," and sort of to just use some of my experiences. But I'm like, well, I can't start when I'm 13. I got to start when I'm 12. And then 12 turned to 11. And I'm like, oh, the hell, let me just start at the beginning. And before you know it, I wrote out my entire life.
Yeah.
And I am sitting with this manuscript, and it's like, well, what am I going to do with it? Because I've gone through things that people really shouldn't go through at ages that they shouldn't go through it at.
Hmm.
Um, and even at the time, I'm like, yo, man, this is really weird. Why am I dealing with this? Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And so, I find myself with this manuscript and I'm thinking about it. And my girlfriend was like, well, why don't you put it out? It can be helpful to people. And I'm like, and then obviously, now that I'm a father and sort of thinking about how to help a person become secure and confident with themselves in order to be the happiest, most productive person they can be, for themselves and for the world around them. And I'm like, okay, well, let me share my story. And then let me become maybe a little bit more invested in my community. I actually don't like organizations. I hate organizations. I'm not a part of any
Wait,
of them.
wait, you're a systems guy who hates organizations.
I hate organizations. Yeah.
Why?
Control. I have control issues.
Okay, you don't like being controlled.
I don't like being in control. I don't mind supporting organizations, but it's definitely on an equal footing. I haven't been registered for a political party in over 20 years. Um, I just haven't. I don't believe in them. I don't belong to any organized religion. I don't belong to any guilds or fraternities or anything like that. I like I like doing my things my way. If our if our our motivations align, cool. If they don't, man, you go do you. I'm actually very comfortable standing on my own. My friends growing up, it used to drive them crazy. Man, why is rock always going that way? And it's like, because I'm not interested in that.
Yeah. Huh.
You know, it just is what it is. Um, and so, like I said, I've pursued my own life for my own enjoyment. And I just got to a point as I saw people online, because I mean I've had a Facebook forever. I mean everyone has. Um, and then looking at the news and just sort of feeling the energy and the atmosphere and around me, and it's like, man, people are really struggling with things that I dealt with when I was 12 and 13 years old. And I've developed this well of compassion all of a sudden. Well, not I shouldn't say all of a sudden. That's literally what my name means. Rahmaan, my name means the most compassionate. And that's a whole story within itself. But I kind of felt as if I wasn't managing my response. I wasn't handling my responsibility. That there was an opportunity here, and I had this wealth of knowledge and information that I was hoarding to myself. And that's useless. And so I avoided Twitter for a long, long time because I had heard all the nasty things about Twitter. I'm like, yeah, I'm not getting into that because I don't care that much.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, no, Twitter is the place where you share ideas. Like that is its sort of place in the ecosystem. So it was slow, and then I got the hang of it, and I found my voice, and I learned how to navigate the characters and that, and I like it. I'm almost off of all the other social media platforms, and I'm almost exclusively. I mean, my Facebook will always be there, you know, attached to friends and family and and people I've known. But Twitter is the place where I share most of my ideas
And where you interact with others' ideas, then.
Yes, and other people and different things. And what I want, the thing that I want to do is I want to help people feel okay with themselves, right? Like I think there's so many different things within the system, within our culture, designed to keep people in this sort of heightened state of anxiety. They make better consumers. The a lot of the myths and stereotypes that we have about other people, about ourselves, about this is the way to live a happy life. You need to check all of these boxes. And I spent half of my life trying to check all these boxes. And I'm like, none of this crap really makes me happy. You know, as independent as I am, still succumb to the programming of, oh, if you've dated someone so long, you're supposed to get married, right? And then you have a kid, and then you buy the house, and then you move to here. And, you know, I did all that stuff, and it didn't make me happy. And I see so many people like struggling and just having their spirit crushed, chasing after these things that aren't even their idea.
Yeah.
And so I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to stand in this crowd of noise and vitriol and sort of plant my flag. Like over here, there's no judgment over here. I mean, I have judgment on some things, but, you know, come as you are, and I'm going to be your friend, not your ally. I hate the word ally.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, I wrote a whole paper about it. I think it's terrible.
Well, what do you think about? I mean, do you know why it came into common parlance, and what is it about that? I mean, because we're really similar in a lot of the things you're saying. Is you're checking off a lot of boxes, like about being anti-organization, and we're born in the same year, 76, I think.
Yeah.
Right. So I think we're kind of Gen X, like
exactly.
We're on our own. We're gonna do our things.
Were you a latchkey kid?
No, there's too many brothers and sisters for that, so Mom had to stay at home.
See, I was the oldest.
Yeah. So, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I was literally out there on an island by myself.
So, but you were saying about you see people getting crushed by chasing after these things, and this might be a little too personal, but you wrote a blog post about it, so this is why I want to bring it up. What happens when your spirit gets crushed when you're not even chasing anything? What happens when you can't even achieve, or not even achieve happiness, but where the opposite of happiness just becomes a constant friend and companion of you? And
Yeah.
how do you shoulder that?
I think it really starts for me. My personal take on it is, and getting back to the use of the word allies, it's like you don't have a best ally, right? You have a best friend. Like the people closest to you are your friends. They love you. They cherish you. They are invested in you, right? Not what they can get from you, just for the fact that you do something for them. You provide value. And so that is what I decided that I wanted to do. I didn't want to be an ally to anyone. I'm friends to people, right? If you need a hug, if you need someone to talk through your grief with, I'm your guy, because I've gone through like the worst grief, some of the worst grief, possible, and I'm on the other side of it. I have
Mm.
this crazy array of experiences that I can just sort of pull out of my database for almost any situation. I mean, it's crazy. All the stuff that's going on in like at Portland State and everything. My parents met at Portland State.
Oh, okay.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I've lived in the Midwest. I've lived in the South. I've been poor. I'm upper middle class, or however you want to define that. So I have this crazy well of experiences that it's
Mm.
it's you know I want to give people a hug and just say, hey, it's okay. Like just you, without anything else, are valuable. You're okay. And I understand where you're coming from. Like, so for instance, a lot of I've been watching your videos, and you deal with like identity politics. And I remember you were talking to, I forget what his name was, um but you were talking about, well, there's the racism towards straight white men these
Yeah.
days,
Yeah.
right? Now, some people may laugh and scoff and say, what do you have to be, upset about, right? And honestly, I have to say, there is some whining about it, because I'm like, hey, yeah, welcome to the crowd. Like, this
Yeah.
is how we all live.
Yeah.
But at the same time, because I have this experience, I know what that's like. It's like, hey, that's not out of bounds, right? Like, to just show up someplace and have someone say, hey, I don't care about what you have to say because you're a white guy,
Yeah.
right? Like, if someone said that to me, it's like, I don't care what you have to say because you're a black guy. I mean, that wouldn't hurt, because, I mean, I'm just not wired that way. But at the same time, that is offensive. I do understand how, let's say,
Mm.
the
Okay.
average person would take something like that. So it's like, wait, hold up. You can't just say that. You can't, you know, demonize someone just because they were born in this bio machine with this particular,
Yeah.
set of demographics.
Yeah.
Because and then also, I won't say friends, I have family that are white guys, and it's like, and so I don't I don't like bullies. You can't just pick on people like that. So I'm always going to stand on the side of people being picked on.
Yeah.
You know? Now, if you've gone out of your way to earn that, well, then I'm gonna
Okay.
let you I'm gonna let you reap what you sow. But
Yeah.
just someone just minding their own business, just trying to present themselves as we say that we want, based on the content of the character. Well, hey, I'm a fan of that. I'm a friend of that. I'm here to defend that.
Yeah.
Um,
It's I'm just kind of associating what you're saying,
yeah,
just kind of picking out the vocabulary words and stuff. It seems like your position in the conversation is it's a more community-based activism that doesn't have a bunch of activist trappings and dogma attached to it. It's that we need to recognize each other as a human being. What do other human beings need? They want
you
to
need
be
to recognize.
recognized. They want to be valued,
Yes,
and that I'm going to build everything on that and then proceed.
yes. And so it actually starts before the community. It starts with yourself. You have to recognize that I'm a human being and I have value. right? Not one of the things. So I grew up. Here's another interesting thread. My mother's a Christian, my father's a Muslim. So I grew up with both. So this very religious background, and there's that idea of original sin, right? And in Christianity, they say, we're born sinners, right? I hate that phrase because I understand the mythology and what they were trying to say, but the layperson, what they take, because we never really remember all the nuances. We just sort of remember the top layer. That's really kind of how marketing works, the imagery. And we know sin is bad, right? We say sin, we equals bad. And what that translates to is I was born bad. And it puts you in the mind frame of you're always having to ask for forgiveness. You're always having to ask for permission. And I think that is, I don't feel that that's empowering. Now, for some people, it works for them. They go on with their lives and that's fine. That works for them. That's fine. But this is not a one size fit all. And so my message is actually not for everyone. And I don't care for it to be everyone. I want it to be for those people who, in their heart, they reject the fact that I was born bad. In their heart, they're like, nah, I'm good. I was born good. And so I want to provide them all the opportunity that they need to be as good as they think they are. Mm-hmm. Right. And it starts from there. And if a person feels good about themselves and they feel, happy and secure and loving, it overflows. One of the things in Christianity, there's a song, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Yeah. Right. And let it shine, let it shine. And so it's like, yeah, here's your light. I'm going to pour fuel on that. Yeah. So that it shines brighter and casts light and warmth to everyone, around. There are verses in the Bible, my favorite Bible verse is Psalms 23, and,
the Lord is my shepherd.
I shall not want and everything. And then towards the end, I think that's the right verse. My cup runneth over, whatever.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm starting to mix verses and songs and everything like that. But there's this concept of when you're so full of love and positive things, it overflows. Yeah. And that overflow, you give it away. You can't do anything. Love is a self-replenishing thing. The more you give, the more you get. Yeah. And I have a well of it, right? I have so much of it. And so I give it freely. You don't really have to do anything to earn it. Just show up.
You wrote a blog post a couple weeks ago about experiencing crippling depression.
Yes.
And I just wonder, how does that square? How do you maintain your connection with that overflowing cup when the darkness is encroaching?
So I've been, various stages of depressed all my life. I don't know why. Well, I have some suspicions, but that episode, it really, the short answer is I was just tired. I was exhausted, right? And the piece that I wrote about it was sort of the physical manifestations of this thing as an extension of me being tired, separate from my consciousness. I was actually very, very calm and lucid in my consciousness, but my body was tired and I was crying and I was so emotional, and I would, someone would, say something and I would just literally burst into tears. And I don't feel that there's any divergence of those two at all. It's like, we all just get tired. Yeah. And it's funny because I haven't had a vacation in 2 years. Okay. And I'd written a book, I'd gone on tour, I'm on Twitter all the time, and sort of this outpouring, and I hadn't allowed myself time to rest. And when I was really just sort of getting low and just kind of worn out and withdrawn into myself and sort of having these symptoms, and I likened that episode of depression, if you read the article, I liken it to just sort of like a cold. right? And if someone is coughing, you offer them some tea and a lozenge, but they're like, no, I'm fine. And you're like, okay, they're going to cough for like the next couple of days, but they'll be fine.
Yeah.
I think this thing that we call depression, and a lot of times that's what it is. That we're just physically exhausted and we need to recharge. We're terrible at vacation in this country, and so
is there a country that isn't terrible? Is like they're an ideal vacationing country?
oh well, most every country takes a lot. Well, not Japan. They're
Okay.
bad. Like a lot of Western Europe. I think the Netherlands is like a perfect country.
Have you been over there?
I
You spent
have
some
been.
time there?
Yeah, well, my last vacation was there. I have an affinity for Germany. I love Germany. I even started learning German some years ago. I'm very rusty, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a the depression, and I actually felt that it was an opportunity, right? Because I know a lot of people deal with depression, and I know a lot of people. You know, are a bit ashamed of it. And so I end up writing it. But I was so tired that I was a bit withdrawn, and people, virtual strangers from Twitter, just, hey, Rock, how you doing? Not necessarily about like the depression, but just reaching out to me because I'm someone that they consider a friend, just want to chat. And sort of this, because I want to build this community of where people are being honest, right? I'm trying to break down some of these protocols and things in society that aren't really beneficial to anyone. Like telling someone that you're fine when you're not fine, that doesn't serve anyone any good. And so they would call like, hey, Rock, how you doing? Just, calling to check up on you. And I'm like, well, you know what? I'm not feeling good at all. Like I'm going through X, Y, and Z. And the outpouring of love and support, people giving me their private numbers on Twitter, like in my DMs and everything like that. This one guy, who is a strong Trump supporter, and I think Trump is terrible. I do not like him, and it's not necessarily even like politically. I mean, even though he is doing some things politically, but as a character, I mean, I'm old. I mean, we're the same age, so we remember Trump going all the way back.
Yeah.
I'm like, not that guy. Come on, I'll take any Republican X over Donald Trump.
That one,
right? On a pure character basis. And so this guy, we were talking about. I think I said about some personality, and he reached out to me. And we talked about this thing that we disagreed upon. And I was like, it's just a disagreement. It has nothing to do with anyone as a person. And he and I have struck up a great friendship, right? And I'm sure he has a MAGA hat and the whole thing. And but we connect on a personal level. This guy, whom I consider a friend, gave me his number. Like, because we talked and there's a friendship and just like the love and the caring of all these people. And it showed me that all the work that I've been doing, because, like everyone, I mean, I don't care about the numbers, but I always check my numbers. I always check likes and my retweets and everything. All this energy that I poured into something as terrible and maniacal as Twitter, right, gave me such an outpouring of love and support when I really, really needed it.
Yeah.
And people were like, man, get better because we need you out here. We respect what it is that you're doing and what it is that you're trying to, to accomplish, and just your presence on Twitter and how you present yourself on Twitter. And man, that I'm bad at taking compliments, right? Because the stuff that I'm doing, it's not mine. I'm just paying it forward. And so I'm very, very bad at taking compliments and adulation. But everyone needs some support.
Yeah. Well, you went into that medium treating people as though they were a community, and then they became your community, and that really showed when it was time for that.
And just the pure love and support and friendship, it's just like it did a lot. It helped really cut through the fog. I mean, I was fighting it, but it really helped cut through it. And that then empowered me to write about it. and then share that back out with the community. And then I started this thing called hashtag Free Fridays, right?
Oh
Of,
yeah.
yeah, of where
What's it about? I remember it from last
so
Friday.
Free Fridays, we share all these other things. I'm like, share something real, share something. If you didn't have a good week, something has been weighing on your mind. One thing, um,
Hmm.
you can't feel emotion, right? You can't physically touch it, but it is a weight, and especially when you don't share it. And it's
Hmm.
easier when you share with other people. We all carry it a little bit for you. That's why community is so important. So I encourage people to say, hey, if there's something that's bothering you, or if there's something that happened to you that that was great, that you really had your heart set up upon, share that, right? We want to hear real stories, and I think that that's
Yeah.
one of the things that is so that's missing today, and that's what people are really craving: the sense of community, right? Everyone feels so isolated, and I'm like, well, if you don't have community over there, you're going to have a community here with me. And I mean, you may have noticed, and for your viewers and listeners, when I'm on Twitter, I don't swear on Twitter at all. Now
You
you
just
get
insert problematic word here.
insert right here. You can read between the lines, but I don't swear. Now in my real life, I mean, it's not sufficient for work. I'm really bad at it. But online, I don't swear.
Yeah.
Online, I don't call people names or say they're stupid or anything like that. I try to take as much time as possible um, to understand where someone is coming from, even if I disagree. But I want to make sure that they know that I am listening. I am taking their feelings into account, because that's all it is really anyway. That I'm listening, and we can have a dialogue. And I
Yeah.
have like some really heated conversations back and forth with some people, whether it's about abortion or euthanasia or Donald Trump. And after it's all said and done, it's
Yeah.
like, are you good?
Yeah.
You know, hug your family, have
Yeah,
fun.
that's one thing that gets lost, or one thing that's missing in the conversation is the sense of an end. And in a lot of like the tumult of the modern discourse is that nobody's really thinking, well, where do I want to end? Like I want to end with talking to a real human being. Like it's
Yeah.
more like I just want to exert my will and keep on exerting my will and finding other places to exert my will. But like having that grounding to return to of I'm speaking to another human being.
You're speaking to another human being always. I mean, well, it could be a bot, but for
Could
the
be a
most
bot.
part, you are talking to a person. And
Yeah.
I don't take for granted, and perhaps, because I work in tech and my team is by wire, they're all over the world.
Okay.
Maybe I'm
Okay.
used to it. I don't know. But I also come with a certain intention, right? I give respect on default. And even when people like come at me real hot, it's like, whoa, hold on now. We don't have to do that. Or, if I see someone attacking, a friend of mine, even if I agree with their position, I'm like, wait a minute. That's not what we do over here in this corner of Twitter. If
Yeah.
if these aren't the rules that you can abide by, then why don't you go somewhere else? And I never block anyone. I will never block. I blocked one person because I mean they sent me a dick pic, and I'm like,
You?
it was well, the
Is this in response to your gay men episode?
I think the whole profile was just this, the whole profile was just overtly sexy and this whole thing. I'm like, this isn't for me, and I don't
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Even if I were gay, this is not the way to get at me. So that's the one profile that I blocked. But I don't block people. I
Yeah.
have muted some people, but even that, I'm just I'll mute because I don't want my phone, you know,
Yeah.
necessarily blowing up
But
all the time.
you do draw the line in the sand when somebody's kind of violating like a certain rules of engagement. You're like, this
Yeah,
isn't
and
how I engage with you.
yeah, this is not how I roll. And then I can tell. I I'm not saying that I'm perfect at it, but some people I can tell that they're just worked up about the topic, and I will try to work. Like I was having a conversation with someone about. I'm a fan of euthanasia. That's a whole thing.
You're a fan of
Um,
it?
Yes.
Like you
I believe,
go around
no,
like
no,
peering in
no,
windows when it's gonna happen. You're like,
no.
yes.
I mean, but as a, that would be weird. But
Oh,
as
okay.
a policy, as a thing, I will say this I used to imagine that I would, if I were ever like really like sick and just about to die, I would like to euthanize myself on the same spot that I was born. Like
Oh,
I'm
interesting.
exit out the same door I came in.
Huh.
Um,
Like
weird.
on your mother's womb? Is that where
No,
we're
no,
going?
but
Okay. I
in
just
the
wanted
room,
to clear that
no,
up.
but like in the room in the city,
Okay. Yeah.
where I was born.
Yeah. Full circle.
I can't do that. It's not a hospital anymore.
Oh, you could
But I'm
still.
like, oh, that would be cool. Um,
Huh.
but so this person who had tried to commit suicide several times and had found some help, and they felt very personal, and this was all sparked behind the situation in the Netherlands. It always goes back to the Netherlands.
Weird.
Um,
Who would have
and
thought?
this person was felt very very personally about it, right? And they were swearing at me and everything, and then I took it and let it pass over me because I know they weren't really swearing at me. They were really really upset by the subject, and so we talked about it.
Yeah.
And I hope this person, I'm sure this person felt respected and heard, and we didn't necessarily disagree on everything, right?
Yeah.
And I think that most people aren't really disagreeing on most things. It's semantics and different things like that. Now, other times, however, I some people have come into my thread with really bad intentions, and you could
Mm-hmm.
tell who those people are, and I don't know. I take a number of different tacks with that because what people don't really understand is that I feel nothing about that at all. You know,
Nothing about
I,
what? Being attacked or.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, nothing. I don't feel a way about it at all. It's like, A, you don't know me, and two, I doubt you'd actually say it to my face.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, and so I'll we can go and we can play and spar back and forth and go, just go at it for hours and hours and hours. Um, but and it's to the point where people don't even approach me that way anymore. I've had,
Yeah.
one comment here, one comment there. It doesn't even I actually want to just tell people, hey, if you have something derogatory to say about me, just skip all the way to the end.
Yeah.
Just skip all the way to the end and get there. If you want to issue a death threat, okay, just lead with that.
Yeah.
Lead with the death threat. Like, oh, you want to kill me? Okay. We can set a time and place if you feel, and we can see about it. You know,
So, what are you going to be doing going forward? Do you have any projects on your plate, or
yeah. Well, yeah. So obviously my girlfriend and her comedy, I'm really, helping her.
are you allowed to plug her? Do you want to plug her?
Oh yeah, yeah. Jen Lederer,
Jen?
Jen. Yeah, Lederer, Lederer. She's
Oh,
funny. She's awesome.
and you guys
Um,
are New York based, New York
We are New
City.
York based. Yeah. There's that. I wanted to put together a show, sort of like a video thing, and bring people here and have the conversations that I don't want to say that I think people ought to be having, but um, interesting conversations, right? Using sort of my systems analytics brain and putting two sort of disparate ideas together and sort of parsing them out. Like
Mm-hmm.
if we can use, abortion and euthanasia as sort of bookends, never mind the pun there, and sort of unravel,
Hmm.
what are the underlying motivations behind this thing.
Mm-hmm. So
All sorts of
you'd have like a couch time or like a round table kind of thing.
yeah.
Is that what you're thinking? Yeah.
Yeah, a really, kind of a one-on-one, and I'm interested in how people come up with the conclusions that they do,
Mm-hmm.
because all of this is an opinion. I know some people feel very strongly about the Constitution. Constitution are a bunch of opinions that people, signed and put their name on and decided, yeah, this is how we're going to do things. It's not necessarily, it's no more relevant than any ideas that we can come up with today. That's just the one that that folks came up with, a couple hundred years ago, and we have fill around the edges and whatever. It's all opinion, because outside of the tech and outside of the Constitution and all these different things, it's just people trying to figure out how to live. Mm-hmm. It's all very simple. People are trying their best to live and be happy and survive. So those are the things that I want to talk about. Explore questions of how do we live better within ourselves and then within our communities. I mean, on a personal level, I am, if you want to describe it, very libertarian on a personal level. You can do whatever it is that you want to do. It doesn't have anything to do with me, fine. You want to mainline meth, sure, keep it over there. But then as it gets to society, I mean, obviously, I have my finance and econ and tech degrees, and, I do like that. I do have it can become, very liberal and very progressive. People use those words, but I'm like, no, this is how you construct something strong. This is how you construct a culture. This is how you create an environment for the individual to be safe and to be able to assert themselves. I don't like the linear thinking. As a systems person, I see the totality. I see the force.
You're saying like right, left, or any sort of binary.
Yeah,
like that.
None of that makes sense. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Progressive circles, those things. Yeah, everyone is picking and choosing whatever.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it from how do we construct something that satisfies, our values.
Yeah.
And, the chief value is, feeling safe and secure within oneself. And if you can do that, the more people feel safe and secure within themselves, the more they have to contribute to society and to other people. And so that's my focus. Yeah.
One more question.
Go ahead.
What's your favorite TV show of all time? Number one.
Favorite TV show of all time? It's Star Trek Next Generation.
Star Trek Next Generation.
Yep.
There we go.
If I had to grab, and in fact, I'm like rewatching them all, but if I had to say, that's probably it. When I was in high school, when it was out, I'd talking on the phone with my girlfriend, and we could be in a fight, like a huge fight. And it was like, came on at like 8 o'clock. So at 7:59, I'm like, Star Trek is on. I'll call you back. Hang up. And then after the hour, we pick up the argument again. And so I have to say, based on that, Next Generation.
Okay, well, let's get a little bit more specific. Which season then? Do you know? I guess you're rewatching it now, so I guess I should ask you in a month or so.
Oh yeah, which season? I couldn't tell you the season, but definitely episodes. One of my favorite episodes, and I know it's a throwback to 1984, but the episode where Picard is captured by the Kardashians. Love that episode.
Are they seriously called the Kardashians? The ones who broke the internet? Or the ones with the 4 lights?
Not Kardashians. Kardashians. That's
okay.
Yeah, right. But yeah, with the lights. I thought that was a brilliant episode. A, because it harkened back to 1984. I thought the first half of that book was terrible. The second half was awesome. But then also it spoke to a certain mental and emotional strength, right? How do you maintain your sanity under duress and pressure? I love that episode, and I thought Patrick Stewart, that was just one of his best performances. Obviously, I like the Borg episode. The
whole plot arc with the Borg.
Huh?
Thing like popping out, like the exploding. No, that's a different.
It was the end of the third season. So the final episode of the third season, beginning of the fourth season. I forget I forget the title of the episodes, but the whole Borg when he was captured, that was a great one. There were a lot of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. They did 9 seasons or 7 or something like that. They did an incredible amount, and they're all
Yeah,
22 episode seasons too.
they did
Just
like
insane
eight
amount of
or
work.
nine.
Yeah.
They did like 8 or 9. The ones with Q were
Yeah.
always great. Oh, one of the phenomenal, a real phenomenal episode was the one where Picard needed his he needed a heart transplant.
I don't remember this
And
one.
yeah, because when he was like a younger cadet, he was stabbed through the heart, so he has like a prosthetic heart, and it needed to be replaced. And so he was sort of thinking, I guess, as he was sort of in this twilight zone, and Q visited him. Well, what would have happened if he didn't start the fight that damaged his heart? And sort of the if you can go back and change like the worst thing you'd ever done, how does that change your life? And I love that episode, which sort of gets back to my story, is like you have to love everything that brought you to where you are. Like I've done episodes on my podcast about slavery and how I'm proud to be the descendants of slaves, right? All that crap that they
Hmm.
went through,
Hmm.
to survive and get to a place so that I can be born with the opportunities that I have.
Hmm.
That's the most amazing thing ever,
Hmm.
right? And like, I'm proud of that. Like, man, dude, would you be a slave? I don't know if I could. I
I
don't
don't
know.
think I could.
Yeah. And
I hate
so,
organizations. I couldn't go to
right,
a.
right. And so to be able to endure that for
Yeah.
hundreds of years,
Yeah.
and the marches and all the fighting to
Yeah.
arrive to a place that I can do what it is that I do, and then provide the opportunities that I can for my daughter. It's a legacy. I'm proud of that.
Hmm.
So that's why that episode, and there's a lot we could talk Star Trek
Yeah.
for. I love Discovery. I'm very, very interested in the new Picard series.
Oh, they're having a new series. I haven't heard that.
Yes, they are.
Okay.
They are going to do a series with Patrick Stewart,
Oh.
on Jean-Luc Picard. So like 20 years later, he's a retired admiral, and that's sort of the basic premise. There was a trailer. I'm excited about it. That's my favorite captain, best captain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Rockman, thanks for joining me. This is good. It's a good just bro time. I felt like we just had just a
Yeah.
conversation.
Yo, can I real quick? Can I plug my book?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll
So
plug it at the beginning, and you can plug it at the end
yeah,
here.
here's my book. Can you see it? Yeah. Inner Demons.
Yep.
This is the story of my life. It's my life, but it's a story, right? I'm not, I'm just giving a very, a narration, what do they call that? A narrative nonfiction of my story. So even though it's mine, you're really just going to follow this character from a
Yeah.
child all the way up to, adulthood. And, there are stories and different things that everyone can sort of attach to. There's abuse in there. There's studying. There's corporate America.
Is
There's
there any euthanasia though?
not yet.
Maybe at the end. Is that like the surprise twist at the end?
Sequel. That's how I end the sequel.
Could you explain the cover? It looked like there's a stone tower
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah. So this is, well, you can't see it because it's hidden under
Shaded.
the words, but this is me in a field. Well, it's a kid in a field. The
Yeah.
shadow is a dragon. That's a wall that has
Oh
been burned
well.
through. It's
Okay.
part of a it's a two-part picture. The first part is the kid in sort of like the city, and there's a wall. And beyond the wall, you can get a sliver of it. It's like this green meadow. And there's a dragon burning down the wall.
Hmm.
And you see the kid looking at the dragon, right? The next picture, the wall is gone. The kid is in the field, sort of like exulting in the sunlight. And the kid's shadow is the dragon. Because the dragon, I mean, that's sort of my concept
The
of
process.
my life, but the process, and it's like, no, that power was in me to break out of my surroundings and all that, nonsense to find myself in the place that I always wanted to be, of happiness and of peace. I have to plug the artist. Her name is Eva. She works at Bang Bang Tattoo Studio here in New York.
Eva,
Yeah.
what's her last name, or is it just Eva at Bang Bang Tattoo?
Yeah, her name is Eva. Okay. I mean, she has this long Turkish, name, but her pen name is Eva. She works at Bang Bang Studios here in New York. I love tattoo artists. I don't have any, but
really,
yeah, none.
I mean, that's just interesting. Like the whole euthanasia thing. Like you're a fan of tattoos, but you don't have any.
Yeah, trying to put me in a box is not.
That's why I don't have any either. I don't want to be branded. No branding here.
Yeah. Well,
buy my
it's
t-shirt.
funny. Yeah, because growing up in the 80s, you're like, oh, a tattoo is easily identifiable. I didn't want to be identified. And now we have facial recognition, so it's like, oh shit, well.
Might as well get a face tattoo then.
Right. I mean, they can tell who you are by the shape of your ears, it seems.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, there we go. Yeah. That's why we should all just wear the cans.
Yeah, there's
protect yourself.
There's makeup schemes to cover your features. There's a whole thing. It's a whole thing.
It's fine.
So,
the robots are going to own us no matter what. It's too late. The singularity is nigh.
Yeah, listen, I keep the 2050 is supposed to be like the shit time. It's like, what? That's what they say.
Okay.
And I thought about that. I was like, oh yeah, I'll be out of here. It's like, no, wait, I'll only be like 75.
Yeah.
Damn, that's still kind of young with modern medicine. I'm gonna have to do all that crap.
You thought you had it easy, but
yeah, but then also I think it won't necessarily be as bad as everyone says it is. I mean, it's always now.
We'll burn that bridge when we cross it.
We'll burn that bridge when we cross it.
Can you pronounce your last name for me so I don't get it wrong?
Yes, Mwongozi.
One,
yeah.
Mwongozi. Okay. Mwongozi. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And your ancestor, is that your father's name then?
So he changed his name.
Okay.
Yeah, he changed his name. Like I said, that whole time and era, he changed his name. I always give him crap, and I'm like, well, I'm the first real Mwongozi ever.
Yeah. Ever?
Well, with the.
Well, yeah, but what's the meaning of that?
So yeah, this is the funny part about it. Mwongozi means leader in Swahili, and my first name is Arabic, Rahmaan, which means the most compassionate, and so my name literally means the most compassionate leader.
So you're doomed to have to give a fuck.
Yes.
In order to be compassionate,
and that was a long journey. As a kid growing up, when I grew up, like being the most compassionate as a guy, it's like, oh my God, no, that it took me a while to realize that having compassion is the ultimate show of strength.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, it's almost like my birthright, right? It's sort of like. And there's all these names, but it's like a title that I had to live up to. Yeah. The most passionate leader. And it's really only in the past couple of years have I began to appreciate the serendipity of being granted such an awesome title.
A charge, yeah.
Yeah, and a charge. It's like, no, that's the standard. Yeah. And so as I try to live up to that standard, I try to be an example for everyone, to raise the bar as much as you can on being a better person.
It's like bro, do you even lift people's spirits?
Yeah, Joe, do you follow what's his name?
What is his name? The one dude,
liberal that lifts.
Yeah, he pops in my threads everywhere.
Yeah, love that guy, man. He's a cool dude, man. He's a really, really cool dude. I love the guy. It's awesome. He had one the other day that I woke up. I forget what it was. I was dying. I'm like, this is the way to wake me up. I appreciate you, bro. That was like 2 days ago. Yeah. But I actually have another call in about 20 minutes.
All right, man. All right. You have a good day. Thanks a lot for joining me.
Anytime you need, man. Anytime, any conversation. I have no filter.
All right. All right, Rahmaan. You have a good night.
All right, brother. See you a little bit.
Ciao.